Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Touching Base with ICCB. My name is Brittany Boston. I will be one of a few facilitators for this afternoon. And before we get into it too far, I do want to take care of a few housekeeping items. As a participant on today's call, you are in listen-only mode. So please feel free to type any questions or comments you may have in the questions or chat feature. I believe you also have the option to raise your hand if you would like, and if we have time, we will unmute you and allow you to ask your questions that way. There are several of you on the call today, so please bear with us as we make our way through any of those questions and comments. This is also being recorded, and so we will be posting this to the ICSPS website once it is completed. It will only be uploaded for about 2 weeks since this is fluid, ever-changing information, but you will have access to it for those 2 weeks. And so with that, I will hand it over to Kathy.
Thank you, everybody. As I mentioned in some of the emails that went out to prepare us for these, we are looking at, and the ICCB team is here today. We have Jay Brooks, we have Cecilia, we have Sam Miller, we have Cecilia Al-Haddad. Sorry, I didn't get your whole name in there, Cecilia. We're all here to answer some of the questions that came in through email. One of the things that I want to talk about enrollment for just a minute, and then we'll talk about all the questions that were submitted via email and be able to share some relevant information. Next slide. So I really want to start the conversation about student enrollment with the statement that is, we are
Kathy, you just left.
Yeah, Kathy, your audio fell out there. Sorry, guys, one moment as we try to fix our audio issues here with Kathy. Okay, it looks like we have lost Kathy for a second.
from all of the
Oh, Kathy, can you hear us? Sorry, your audio cut out for a good few minutes there.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I'm having a little trouble with internet today. If that happens again, I will call in, okay?
Okay, perfect.
So again, I just want to restate what our goal for the emails that you received from regional support were to open up a communication stream so that we could see what you're doing. We could kind of capture some innovative ideas, disseminate them to everybody, but it also allows us to pull that information together, and it allows us to share that to our state entities and to our federal funders to talk about all of the things that are actually happening at the local level, so that we're not just saying, yes, numbers are low, we're actually taking action steps to get there. So a lot of what we're doing is not only about gathering information, it's about providing the support that you need to get the help, to share ideas, and then to also be able to answer to our stakeholders about what we're doing as a state to address this head on. I've seen a lot of the responses that you've shared with regional support on those answers. I've seen your concerns, taken heart to those comments and concerns, and we can use that information to support where we are statewide. I will say we do want to increase our numbers. We do want to increase enrollment. I know all programs also want that same thing. So together we're going to try to keep working in that same direction, okay? So what I want you to know is kind of where we are with that and why you're going to be hearing a lot about enrollment, but you're also going to be sharing your concerns that we can take this information back to our leadership and our stakeholders and say, here are the steps that we're doing, here's what's happening, and here's how we're addressing it. Several questions that relate to enrollment that we received were about generation and the requirement to have a certain portion of the budget, 45% of your budget, for direct instruction. As I mentioned in December, there will be an adjustment made to the generation expectation at the end of the year. I don't know what that will be. I'm working in-house with our data to look at that so that we can make a reasonable recommendation. We're going to be doing that at the end of February, starting to really look at the data. And I cannot express to you how very important it is to have your data entered into the system, into DAISY, correctly and often, because we're going to use that data to make projections, and we're going to use that data to the benefit of everybody and make reasonable suggestions about what those changes should look like. So we will do that in time so that the entire, fourth quarter, March, April, May, all the way through everything, you will have that information to make appropriate adjustments. Okay, so short answer, there will be adjustments. I just am not ready to say what that looks like yet. Okay, next question or next slide. Okay, so we did see that there were questions about exit indicators and targets. We often get questions about whether we can change those targets considering the pandemic and the extenuating circumstances of this year. Our targets are negotiated with OCTAE. We don't have the authority to change those. I can tell you that we have ongoing, and I have monthly conversations with the OCTAE staff, and we report out where we are and our challenges. So they are also very aware of what our concerns are. And that is the best answer I have right now. We can't change them, but they are aware because what we're seeing in our state is mirrored nationally. So that's what I've got on the updates with renegotiating with OCTAE. A couple of other things, high level things. We had questions from people on how to track exit indicators and what that actually looks like. So in our provider manual from pages 87 to 90, there are there's information on those exit indicators and what we're looking for. So that will help you decide what you need to track. Because the question was, what are we tracking for that? But we're also currently working on a flow chart, a visual that we can provide that will give you a really clear and concise step-by-step resource and tool that will help you understand what you're tracking and how this is all coming together to get to our outcomes and our exit indicators. Our goal is to have that done right before the IASA conference in mid-March. So we can start releasing some of that information to you, and you'll have that tool. We're also looking at a data dashboard that we're going to put together because many of the questions we're also asking about comparing our data to stakeholders across the state, to other states and things like that. So we're looking at creating this great dashboard, a visualization tool, so you can actually see what's happening. These were in the works prior to the questions that you've asked, so I wanted you to be aware that we know that these are needs that you have, and we're working towards those, and you're going to start seeing some of that hard work come into fruition over the next few months so that you have more tools at your fingertip. Before I go to the next slide, I wanted to ask, we do have Jay, Sam, and Cece here. And do you guys want to add anything to the discussion on the exit indicators and data reports?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jay Brooks. And just to sort of echo what Kathy said there, some of this information is obviously, it's not new. It's information that you guys have had. But what we really want to try to do is to make as Kathy put it, a more user-friendly way of identifying this, and just sort of through the process of creating this flow chart, I think it will be really helpful to help you to understand from the point of entry to the point of exit, which is the trigger for all of these exit indicators and follow-up measures, how the data flows. So I think that will be a big help. And then just getting kind of in your hands the dashboard that we're looking at. We expect to have something in a sort of preliminary format in late spring for feedback, and then we'll do the polishing on it and have a more finalized, polished version of it available in summer.
Okay. Oh, yes. Yes, thank you for clarifying that. That was a summer. We did discuss summer for the data dashboard, so I did not mean to lump all of that in. I probably gave everybody a heart attack when I said by IASA. So to clarify, that's the visualization data dashboard will be ready by summer, and the flow chart a little bit sooner. Thank you.
Yeah, and maybe one other thing I should clarify is the dashboard will include these follow-up measures and include information that will allow you to be able to drill in and look at your specific program, things of that nature. But we also want to be more comprehensive than just the exit indicators. So we want to be able to provide you sort of a user-friendly format where you can look at not just the exit indicators, but more globally allow you to look at enrollment, enrollment by race, ethnicity, by gender, all of those types of things that are, for many of you who've used dashboards and interacted with them, that you're familiar with. So we want to try to approach this with a holistic kind of global view of telling the adult ed story.
There is a question about, will that dashboard provide ability to see providers across the state? And while that tool would be possible, what I think we would do when we release that is provide you kind of some training to show you how to use that, because you want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples in each of the kind of comparisons that you want to look at and what benefit that would give you to do that. So the goal is to make sure that we are transparent with our data, to give you a tool that you can use, and we will provide like some training on how to use that and how to use that for continuous improvement in your program. So those pieces will come after this is kind of completed. Okay, and I see a lot of questions coming in about that. It looks like people are excited, so that's wonderful. But right now we're going to leave this one at the fact that it's coming, it's under development, and we will provide you glimpses as we're developing it and training once it is released. Okay. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so a lot of the questions that we also got in our email and that I've been fielding for the last few weeks are the bridge, IET, ICAPS, and IELCE. At the beginning of the year, a lot of you received emails from us saying, okay, we need to have bridge programming. So there's been back and forth with your regional support, with our team. We now have a web-based process that you can complete your proposal for your bridge program. It goes into our database through a JOT form. Basically, we can share that information, track it, provide you feedback, and have a better understanding of what's happening across the state. So we do have all AE programs are required as part of their grant agreement to have a bridge program. There was a question about IELCE programs and IET programs. So students who are enrolled in an IELCE program need to have access to an IET, which means somewhere in your APC, they have to have access to an IET. So we're working with our experts. That would be the Southern Illinois Professional Development Center and the ALRC, and they can help address these questions at a specific program level to help you put together what is necessary for those components. We're doing some work with these programs with Burlington English so that all of the IELCE programs had access to a specific part of Burlington English curriculum that would be focusing on career exploration and fulfill the requirements of the bridge programming. So we at least have a step in that direction for you. So we're working towards giving you the tools to be able to do these. So if you're looking at building a bridge or an IET program, I encourage you to work with our experts, the SIPD Center. They will do great work in helping you. Angela Gerberding is also a part of the ICCB staff who will answer any of these questions. And then I am going to tell you to make sure all students are identified in DAISY. So a couple questions that are related to this that I will address. Let's see. Financial incentives for programs meeting generation. Right now, I'm not looking at financial incentives. We're looking at trying to get everyone to the expectation of their grant agreement. So we're not looking at incentives yet at this point. And there's another kind of question on the data dashboard. I think, Jay, you've got a lot of excitement about that information that we're going to be sharing. They want to be able to see if they can compare cohorts to get comparative data. So what I'm going to do is take all the comments that are related to that dashboard. I'll be able to pull those out of this speech. I'll send those to Jay, and we can start adding these kind of comments and questions into their planning. Okay. Next slide. Okay, DAISY. Woo, lots of questions on DAISY. And a lot of the questions that came in can be addressed in the DAISY Help Desk Manual. I'm going to turn this session over to Cece for just a minute. She's going to share her screen and show us some of the things and answer some of the specific questions.
Yeah, so bear with us here for just 1 minute as I switch over the reins to Cece here. Okay, so Cece, you should have, there we go. You're pro.
Okay, so what are you seeing? Are you seeing a web browser or are you seeing a map of Illinois?
We are seeing your web browser with DAISY 2.0 user guide.
That is what I wanted. I don't have any feedback here, so thanks. Great, so I wanted to take this opportunity to just kind of walk through some really helpful parts of the user guide. Because I know. Oops, did you need it? Sorry, did I interrupt you, Kathy?
Oh, you're fine. I was just answering that last question, but I'm going to, just to wrap up with the IETs, there will be conversations and conferences when the RFP comes out that will address those specific questions like that when everybody is available to be at those bigger conferences. So now I'm going to turn this over to Cece.
Great. And feel free to interrupt me if you notice any other questions that I can answer right now. So first off, I wanted to review this frequently asked questions page. So as Kathy mentioned, a lot of the questions that I get in email are really frequently asked questions. Almost 80% of the time, it's a question that I've seen before. And so those really high frequency questions I try to put on this page. I've broken it up into different categories, so you can just browse through and try to find the question that you're looking for an answer to. And you can also use, if you're familiar with the control find feature, and a little search bar will pop up on your screen, and let's say you want to know something about CASAS, and it'll show you every point on the screen where CASAS shows up, so you can try to find the information that you're looking for more quickly. Another helpful tool on this is the trainings page. I've gotten a lot of questions about where you can find the training videos from the trainings that were held previously this year. They're all held here. So every training has a link straight to the YouTube recording of that given training. And then one last thing that I wanted to show on this web page was updates to DAISY 2.0. So I know that a lot of you have things that were available to you in DAISY version 1 that aren't available to you now with DAISY version 2, and we are working on those things. So this page kind of is designed to keep you up to date with what we're working on now and also what we've completed. So these are the things that we've completed so far this year, and these are things that came from you all, things that you were asking for. And if you click on any of these links, it'll show you how to access that given tool. And then in this section, it shows you what we're working on now and what is coming up after that. And one last thing that I wanted to show regarding the videos, because I know a lot of them can seem really overwhelming. Like this, this classes training, for example, is 42 minutes long. So I know if you're looking for a quick answer to a question, you might not want to go through a 42-minute video in order to find something like that. But one thing that I've done with all of these videos is divided them into chapters. So if you go to the description of them.
I want to pause for just a minute. Some of the feedback that we're getting is if you're showing different links on your screen, those links aren't showing. So if you're only showing the table of contents, so whatever you're seeing isn't necessarily showing on the screen. So the two things that I would say to people is that we can get the link. The link is on the ICCB Adult Education website to the DAISY provider tool. It is on the Adult Ed provider resources. You can link right there. And all of the tools are right at your fingertips. And now it looks like your screen is moving, Cece, so I'll let you go ahead and show those videos. And the link again to find the DAISY help guide is directly off of the ICCB Adult Ed webpage. It's under provider resources, and there's a section where it says DAISY. The other question that I had is where people can get this information. And again, it links directly off of our website.
And if you're looking for just the link itself, it's pretty easy to remember. It's just iccb.org/DAISY/. And I always mention the second slash because if you don't type the second slash, then it's not going to bring you to the page. The internet is a weird place. So are you looking at YouTube now? Just to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So if you're not familiar with this tool, I created chapters in each of these videos. So if you go to the description of each of the videos, it'll have a timestamp and then some sort of topic. And so let's say you're looking, like you don't want to watch this entire video, you just want to figure out how to do a policy job, just click on the timestamp next to policy jobs, and it'll take you straight to that point in the video to find the information that you need. And in addition, for a lot of these trainings, anything that says live after it, I know a lot of you had questions about how to access the PowerPoints. The link to the PowerPoint is also in the description. So again, just some tools that you might find helpful that'll save you a lot of time instead of waiting all day for me to answer an email. So are there any questions about this?
There are some DAISY questions, and then I'll let people type in the questions about the user guide while we're addressing some of these questions. There is a question about if the attendance is fixed to allow for percentages. So I'm not clear that I'm not sure I understand that question, but it is to know if attendance will be fixed to allow for percentages. A second question is quarterly reports appear to not match. A program is a little confused about the data not matching. So what I will tell you about these questions, work with your regional support on specific questions, provide as much detail to what is working or not working as you can. We can then work together to make sure that we have these concerns addressed rapidly. You can work with DAISY support if you have the DAISY support desk. If you have a specific question about, a page not rendering or something like that. but we are here to help you. And the more we can get from you on these questions, the sooner we can resolve your questions and your concerns. So I'm going to ask you if you guys understand the question about attendance will be fixed. We'll go ahead and answer it. Otherwise, I'll
Kathy?
you got that? Okay.
Oh, you can go ahead, Jay.
No, that's all right. Go ahead, Cece. I'll go after you do. Go ahead.
So if I think I know what this person is talking about. So we recently allowed for the ability to print attendance sheets. Oh, not attendance sheets, attendance reports. So the attendance report shows the historic attendance of a student, and I believe it's one class. Am I right, Jay? Or is
Correct.
it everything?
I believe it's specific to the class.
And after we released this report, we got feedback that it didn't have the percentage of attendance for the students, and that is something that we've added, so that should be available to you now. And if you have any trouble with that, feel free to just shoot me an email and we'll try to figure it out. And then regarding the second question about the reports not matching, that is a frequently asked question that I've received. It's in the reports section, and it is which students are eligible to appear on reports. And there's a written explanation in the required report section, and also a recording in the reports training that explains why students appear on certain reports but not others, and how we're calculating those numbers that are appearing on your reports. Are there any other questions I can help with?
While one thing I would just add to kind of echo what CC is saying here, and to Kathy's point, I think one thing that would be extremely helpful is if you encounter situations, part of this has to do with the issue of the data lag in DAISY 2.0, where the reports that you generate today reflect only data that was entered through yesterday. So there is a bit of a lag from the previous day to today's date. But to Kathy's point, when you reach out to your regional support folks or to the DAISY help desk, if you can identify, the specific report, the kind of the date and time in which you generated that report and what the discrepancy is, then we can kind of track that down. But like if it's something where you say, well, the numbers in this report aren't matching the numbers in this report, there's so many tables that are going on in these reports, as you guys know. Sometimes it's really the devil's in the details. So if we can isolate to what the numbers are, then it's much easier to make that comparison. And typically, depending on how data is being entered, it could be that the information that you run today, someone went in, maybe they clean up some errors, they enter some more data, you run the exact same report in the morning and the numbers are dramatically different. But that should be anticipated and expected just simply because of the way that the system is designed to calculate things based on the previous day's work. So, but, in summary, I would say if you can identify those three things, what was the report, the date and time you ran it, and the specific number that you're finding the discrepancy in, then we can take it from there to help you feel confident in the numbers you're seeing.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Jay. That's an important point. All right, are we ready to move on?
I'm not seeing any more questions about DAISY. I do want you to know that we take your questions seriously. We do look at all the questions. We do look at what you ask us for so that we can make sure that you can build confidence in what we're reporting out. I know that CC and our data staff work on a weekly meeting with our DAISY Kate staff to keep moving forward. So you're going to start seeing more and more of the things that you want returned and functionality. I know we've done quite a bit recently. So just keep the faith and know that CC is working diligently to get all of the information out and the responses to your questions. I hope you find the help desk tool very useful. We're trying to make it a tool that you will use. Okay, so the question this one is a little bit more complicated, and these are relating to generation of students. Let's see, let me read the entire question. Students without pre-test count and generation for a period of time while the program is whitelisted. So can you guys answer how we're tracking generation for students who are in an error state? I mean, I know we're working on these steps.
Yeah, I could take that, Kathy.
Okay.
So as you guys know, the basis for adult ed funding is the AFL certification of units report. That's what you guys have historically signed off on at the end of the year to say this is the number of students we've served and this is what the units look like. Historically, that specific report mirrored your program status report. It's all inclusive of everyone meeting the minimum criteria to be reported. The thing that we have been working on in terms of that certification of units report is obviously we have to keep it the way that it's been done historically, but also to be able to generate the report that would include individuals who are in an error state, or specifically, if I should let me clarify this issue of students who are impacted due to COVID. And we have, in essence, what's called a pandemic impacted identifier, where individuals who were being served during the time that services were impacted by COVID, we can generate that report and see what things look like when we take that into consideration, as opposed to if we just ran it the way it had been done historically. So, work and some comparisons are continuing on that front, but, we can't lose sight of the historical method. And once we're, sort of out of the woods on this and things begin to return to normal, that is the definitive source report. But adding in that ability to look at things that fall under the pandemic impacted dates that we've designated gives us some flexibility that we will be examining as we do some of the things that Kathy's been talking about here throughout the month of February.
So, okay, guys, I know that you guys have a lot of questions because generation and all of this is so critical to everybody. But to keep us on task and to keep us focused, please email me those questions that you have specifically. I will put a frequently asked question back, kind of compile those and get some more thoughtful answers to you. So I'm going to ask that we are going to move on from this part of the conversation. I will ask you to send me emails with these specific questions, and we will provide some guidance and some answers to these questions and provide a little bit more detailed information because we do have another question about how the whitelist designation works and things like that. So please email those to me, please, and then we will get you the answers and I will point you in the right direction to get those answers, okay?
And also feel free to check out the, I know I kind of keep mentioning this. Feel free to look over the frequently asked questions page because I do have some pandemic information in here, like explaining what a whitelist is and how you can get one. Okay, I'm going to turn the presentation back over to Brittany so she can continue.
Yes, perfect. Okay, bear with me one moment here. Okay, are you seeing the slides again?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we can go to the next slide. And Jacqueline, I have seen your question. I've made note of it. We will get you an answer on that one, okay? Those are the questions that got emailed into me. So we did a very high level of kind of where we are with it. I am sorry that some of the answers are, we'll get you better answers in about a month, but that's the reality of where we're at. So is Caitlin on the phone? Was Caitlin able to call in?
Yes, she is. Let me go ahead and find her really quick to unmute her.
Okay, Caitlin has an announcement she wants to make, and then we're going to go over to the ALRC because they have some updates. We've had some questions about some of the instructional staff pathways. So Caitlin is going to update you on some information, and then we're going to go over to Lori Martin. And Caitlin's announcement is like fresh off of the books. The email went out literally 5 minutes before this webinar started. So as soon as we get her on, you're going to love what she has to say.
Well, hopefully. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So there is an email that just went out to the field from Jennifer Foster regarding the Constitution test. Recent board meeting about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, the ICCB did decide to suspend the administration of the U.S. and Illinois state Constitution tests. As I'm sure that everyone is aware, we've had difficulties maintaining enough test centers, particularly in the Cook County region, to make completing that requirement viable for our high school equivalency test takers. And given the current state of COVID-19, that doesn't seem like it's changing rapidly enough. So the board decided to suspend the administration of the Constitution test, which does mean that we now have a waiver, not just provisional, but a complete waiver of the Constitution test that's effective on Monday, February 1st, and lasts through December 31st of 2021. This waiver is retroactive, so that does mean that anyone who completes an HSE battery from now to December 31st, but also anyone who completed an HSE battery in the past and passed all modules is eligible to receive their certificate at this time. So your current students, if the last thing that they needed was their Constitution test, on Monday they will be credentialed. If you have former students who only needed their Constitution test, on Monday they will also be credentialed. If you have candidates who are in your programs right now who are taking their GED or their HiSET tests, and they complete and pass all subjects before the end of this calendar year, December 31st, those individuals will also be credentialed without the Constitution test requirement. That retroactive waiver is going to be maintained, so they will not be asked to come back and complete that requirement. They will just be fully credentialed. And then the board has also decided to continue to look at how we administer the Constitution test requirement in the future. So we're going to be considering potentially moving this from a high stakes or pass-fail exam to a learning module potentially that our students could take instead. So that rather than coming into a testing center to test, we might ask them to enter a program or enter a testing center to take this learning module, take it at home or on their phone, and that would have benchmarks and check marks throughout it, so that this is not necessarily the burden that it's become, but an opportunity for learning. So that formal announcement, as Kathy mentioned, is very hot off the presses. I think it went out about 5 minutes before our meeting. And the change itself is also very hot off the presses because it will go into effect on Monday. So if the other thing to consider is that if you have an operational testing center right now and you have Constitution tests scheduled, those candidates do not need to come in to complete that Constitution test requirement. If you're offering the exam as part of your curricula, I think you could continue to do so, continue to offer it, like if it's part of your civics program, for instance. But it is not necessary at this time through December 31st as part of a completion for a high school equivalency certificate. I know that everyone's on a tight time schedule, so I'll ask if you have questions, feel free to email me. On the memo itself, my email address or Jennifer's email address is included, and I will see if we can drop it in the chat box as well.
Okay, just some questions on that, Caitlin. How far back is this retroactive? And a little bit, basically that, and people are asking for more detailed information. I think the email that went out to program administrators will probably answer those questions. So once you guys have a chance to actually see that one, then let us know what continued questions you have.
Yeah, so to answer the first question, it's retroactive in perpetuity. We have always maintained that GED, HiSET, or test scores are good in perpetuity. So if a candidate had completed a high school equivalency battery in the past, no matter how long ago it was, that candidate was always eligible to come in to take their constitution test and complete their high school equivalency certificate. So when we waived this requirement, it did not make sense to say that has changed. And there would not be a way for candidates who, completed and passed in the past to come in and complete their constitution test requirement now when we waived it for everyone else. So the decision was made just to do that waiver retroactively all the way back, because we've always said, at any time you can come in to finish that constitution test requirement, and with a testing suspension, that would no longer be the case. So if they have completed and passed a high school equivalency battery in full, no matter how old that high school equivalency battery was, they're not going to be required to finish the constitution test requirement. Now, if they did not complete and pass, then of course they would be required to complete and pass a high school equivalency battery. And if they did so before the end of this calendar year, the waiver of the constitution test would apply to them as well. And that is, it's included in the memo as well.
Caitlin, they wanted to know if the constitution test is, can they still give it online, or will that be shut down?
Let me coordinate with our database manager. I think it's still active. I don't see a reason why we couldn't leave that up, because what we've essentially done is we've coded the database to ignore that requirement, but it doesn't actually delete that content. So let me check in with him. It's part of the contract. I'm sure if programs wanted to still have it as part of their core curriculum, that we could make that happen. So I will get back to you with that answer. Any other questions for me that I can answer right now? Otherwise, just as I said, feel free to email me. That email address is tucked into that memo.
Don't see any.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Let's see. And I think I'm going to answer one more question that popped up that was related to the grant process. That just kind of popped up, and I want to go back and make sure this is a competitive year. This is a competitive RFP year. We will put information out and meetings and update to help people understand what that looks like as it gets time to release that. So this will not be a continuation year. This will be a competitive RFP process. To clarify why we're doing that is we are required to run a competitive process every 4 years. We were allowed to extend last year and not be a competition. We did work with Octave to extend our continuation year because we didn't want anybody having to write a competitive RFP at the beginning of this pandemic. But we are now in a point where we absolutely cannot make this year a continuation year. It must be a competitive year. So that RFP process will go out, and there will be announcements made and bidders meetings so that you can come in and learn about the process and all those pieces to it. Okay, so just to clarify that piece of question that has come in a couple times. I'm excited about some of the relief that we're going to get for the Constitution, and we have some good plans to move forward and help you guys address ongoing questions. And the last set of questions that came into, actually that went into the ALRC about these pathways and professional pathways. So they asked if they could have a few minutes at the end of today to kind of clarify what these pathways are and who is the best audience for them. So I'm going to turn this over to Lori and let her update you on these professional pathways.
Yes, Lori, let me unmute you here. Okay, so Lori, you should be able to unmute yourself and share at this point.
Yes, so are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, we asked Kathy for just a few minutes to update you about a couple of new things that are going on, in particular with the Esl Standards Proficient Instructor Training. So to set the context for all that, the slide that's up right now is an example of one of the pathways. And for those of you who may be newer to administration here in Illinois, just to give you a little history, the ICCB and the PD network established this pathway system several years ago, and it serves as a guide for administrators and for teachers to determine kind of what professional development they'd like to do, as well as for you as administrators to kind of formulate the planning for your teacher's professional development. What you have on the screen here is the pathway for ESL instructors, but there's a similar one for ABE, ASE, and there are some additional pathways as well. You can find them on the Excellence in Adult Education website that you have the link for at the bottom of the screen. So the way that this pathway works is you see that there are more or less 4 categories. So there's ESL Preferred Instructor, and then Standards Proficient Instructor, Specialist, and Master Teacher. And what I wanted to update you about today has to do with the Preferred Instructor, and then the blue column, the Standards Proficient Instructor. So the ICCB has required all instructors to complete Standards Proficient Instructor training in either ESL or in ABE-ASE. In order to get into that training, and you're probably aware, the ALRC has just announced the Esl Standards Trainings that are coming up this spring, and the Central Service Center has just announced their ABE-ASE trainings coming up this spring. So those have been hitting everybody's email boxes. In order to get into those standards trainings, there are eligibility requirements. And for ESL, you see them in that kind of beige colored box that's on the left-hand side of this graphic. There are a number of eligibility requirements, and the one that is in red is the training or coursework in ESL methodology. So in addition to being English proficient and having some technology proficiency, etc., ESL instructors that want to attend the standards training must also have had some kind of training or coursework in ESL methodology. And there has been some confusion over this in the past, and so I want to clear up some of that as well as announce some changes to this. So if I could have the next slide. So that methodology requirement can be met in 4 different ways. There's 4 options. So you have them on the screen here. A person could have an MA-TESOL degree, an ESL endorsement on a K-12 teaching license. They could have an ESL certificate. So for example, a Cambridge or CELTA certificate. Or they could take the brand new, very exciting iLearn course that is called Esl Methodology that we just opened yesterday. So although my news is not quite as fresh as Caitlin's about the Constitution test, it's pretty fresh. So this Esl Methodology course is brand new. It's open to anybody. It's free. And it will help people who don't have option 1, 2, or 3 in their background to satisfy the eligibility to get into the ESL standards trainings. Previous to this, there were 2 links courses available. However, those courses on links have been disabled due to the fact that Adobe Flash is no longer operable, and those courses relied on Flash. So we have taken a fair amount of the content from those courses and developed our own course that is simply called ESL Methodology. It carries 7 PD hours with an additional 1-hour assignment that's optional. And as I said, anybody can access this course. It's free. It doesn't require any special registration, but it is new and it will help your instructors satisfy the eligibility to get into the standards training. So if I could have the next slide. The standards training, the ALRC does the registration for that, and we have a new registration system, and we're going to need your help with that. The way that it works is your instructor will register online for training on our website. And then the ALRC staff, our staff person, Yvonne Baginski, will email the program administrator for that instructor, requesting confirmation that the instructor meets the eligibility requirements that you just saw on the graphic, and which of the ESL methodology options was met. So she will email and then wait to receive an email reply from you. And upon receipt of your confirmation, we will then process the registration and the instructor will get their instructions to start their training. So this is a new system. We hope that it will work. It will just be starting today or next week as people begin to register for those trainings. But you can expect to get emails from Yvonne asking you to confirm that your instructor has met the eligibility requirements. And then if I could have the last slide. Oh, I'm sorry.
And then they register through the Excellence site for these trainings, correct?
There is the registration information is posted on the Excellence site, and that information is downloadable. It has the links to register through our online registration system. That's right.
Okay.
And those of you who may not be familiar with these ESL Standards Proficient Instructor Training, it has three main parts. The first part is an online course that's called Introduction to ESL Standards. This is not the same as the methodology course that I was just talking about. It's part of the training itself. There are 2 half-day, 3-hour live webinars, and then a final assignment. And all of this carries a total of 14 hours of professional development. And when the person's assignment has been approved, they receive their ESL Standards Proficient Instructor Credentials Certificate. This is a similar setup to how the ABE ASE Standards Proficient Instructor Training rolls out as well. So now, is there any questions? Or
just a real quick, there are a couple questions. I do want to keep a couple of these questions, and I know that we have some people that have a hard out at 1 o'clock, so I want to make sure I have time to address the questions. The question, this is about all of the Standards Proficient trainings, and is there a deadline for instructors to complete Standards Proficient training within the amount of time from hire? That is not a policy at this time. We do expect programs to have Standards Proficient teachers, but we don't have it set down to within a certain amount of time from hire. We also don't have a policy for instructors to complete all the levels of the pathways. We are saying that you need to have teachers who are Standards Proficient and expert educators. We know from our data that it has a positive correlation to student outcomes. So what we do not have policies in place that say at a certain window of time, this is how you have to reach that, okay?
Thank you, Kathy. If there are any other questions, that's fine. Otherwise, I don't have any other information to share, so.
Okay, guys, I really appreciate everyone's updates. I know we had a lot to share with you today. And I know a lot of your immediate concerns are about generation and enrollment and instruction and funding. I know that those are critical issues. We'll get that information as quickly as possible. I know that you have a lot of questions about DAISY. Continue to use those tools that we're putting together for you and reach out to either regional support or to Kate support with concrete information about what you need so we can make sure that we track this and we can communicate with you and make sure that we have your concerns addressed. I'm excited about the Constitution update and all of the pathways. Remember, you can get to the Excellence in Adult Education website, and there's information about all the various pathways in there, and you can register from there. That's our main and our central location for all of our PD. So use that as a hub for your resources, and the information that Laura provided is available to you guys from that site too. So our registration process and all of that goes through the Excellence in Adult Ed. Okay, guys, I will hold on for a couple of minutes for anybody with lingering program-specific questions that they would like to ask. But for those of you who kind of have your questions answered, feel free to sign off and enjoy your Friday. If it's okay with Brittany, if you don't have a hard out, I'll hang on for 10 to 15 more minutes for any program-specific questions. Is that okay?
Yeah. Yep, that works for me.
We can stop recording for the program-specific questions, and I'll just be available for a few minutes for people who have some specific issues. But for the heart of this meeting, we are done, and enjoy your Friday.
Kathy, there was a question about when one of the trainings is completed by an administrator, in other words, the pathway trainings, could they include data counted as a trained instructor? And I answered and said, if that administrator is also an instructor, that would work, but the pathways are for instructors.
That was how I was going to approach that answer, absolutely, because they are instructionally driven content. So, yeah.